Hello again, folks. Tonight we're going to do a fun little electronics project, and this isn't going to be a kit that I've purchased from AliExpress or anywhere like that. It's purely going to be using components that I've got lying around in the workshop. You know, cheap and readily available components that you've most likely got in your parts box at home. Now, you may have seen my recent competition time video where I was asking for feedback on my channel, you know, just looking at ways of improving the content, you know, to make my channel a bit more interesting and entertaining to both my subscribers and people stumbling across my channel by chance when they're browsing through YouTube. And one of my subscribers, John High6, hi there John, John suggested that I take a through-hole kit and basically convert it to a surface mount kit, just to see how small I can in terms of physical size, you know, how small I can actually build the circuit. And I thought it was a good idea, but sadly I don't have a massive inventory of surface mount components just now, so that's something I'm definitely going to do in the future. But it did give me sort of food for thought, and I thought, well, I can't do it with surface mount stuff, but how small can I build a through-hole kit? So I thought that's what I'm going to do. That obviously turned into, you know, what circuit I'm going to build, and I thought, well, what was the first circuit ever built that got me into electronics? And it was probably the same circuit that got many of you into electronics, the old 555 timer circuit where it flashes an LED on and off. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to build a 555 timer circuit, but with a slight difference. So, as I say, you've probably made one of these before, but of course the key component of a 555 timer circuit is the 555 timer. Yeah, really popular chip, probably, I imagine it's probably the most mass-produced chip of all time. Really, it's in everything. It's used everywhere. You know, it's really common. It'll be around forever, I'm sure. Yeah, so we've got our chip itself. We've got the LED that the chip's going to flash, and we've got a few passive components. So we've got two 1K resistors and a 470K resistor, and finally we have a 1 microfarad electrolytic cap there. So that's our components. We're obviously going to have to build it, and we could build it on a piece of Vero board, or you know, a piece of this a prototyping board, if you want to call it that. But of course that's absolutely huge, you know, and you know, we're trying to build a small circuit here, aren't we? We could do it on a piece like this, much smaller. We could easily build it in half, or even probably a quarter of this would probably do. But tonight we're not going to do it on any form of PCB. We're going to build this circuit directly onto the chip itself, which should hopefully be a bit interesting, I should say. So you've seen Dave Card probably over on the EEV blog. I know I have. But tonight you're going to get Chris Card. I based it on Google Images, found the 555 timer circuit, one of the simpler ones, and I basically drew it out on one of these jiffy bags I had lying around the workshop. Now, I should point out or highlight to you that this is the bottom of the chip. So generally, you know, a circuit diagram, it's got the, you know, looking down, top down, but this is obviously looking at the bottom of the chip. And the reason for doing that is basically some of the components are going to go underneath, and it's just, I think it's a bit easier that way. So just bear that in mind if you're watching along at home. So I suppose let's crack on is the thing to do. So I'm going to use my helping hands here. Now just take note that the notch is on the left as in the drawing there, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clip that in there like so. Now I will zoom in at this point, and hopefully you should be able to see what I'm doing here. So we've talked about the components and the values. This is the locations. We've got a resistor between 8 and 7 and 7 and 6. We've got a couple of connections between 2 and 6 and 4 and 8, and we've got a resistor. We've got the from pin 3 we've got a resistor onto the anode of the LED, and then a cathode onto pin 1, and then we've got our capacitor in between pins 1 and 2. So that's how it's going to look, or that's how the circuit is, or how that is the circuit. Get my words out. Next thing to do is basically tin up and make these connections here. So we'll do those first on the underside of the chip. So what I'm going to do first of all is basically just tin up the required pins. So 4 and 8. So I'll just apply a dab of solder in there, and same on pin 8. and 2" 6". Like so. And all we're going to use to make these connections is a piece of cut off from a component, you know, a resistor or whatever. So we'll put pin 4 on first. And we want this right up against the bottom of the IC. So pin 4 goes to pin 8. Like so. And we'll just trim that off. And then we'll do the other one, which is pin 2 to pin 6. Now, of course, we're going to have to take care here that we don't short these two together. So what my suggestion would be to tack up one side, like so, and then just gently lift it off. Let's just come off there. Yeah, gently lift it up till you get a bit of clearance, and then tack it up. Like so. Okay, so we'll remove that from the help hands just now, and then we'll just trim the leads off. And give it a quick inspection. So there we go, those were connections made, and then just looking at side on, we can see we do have clearance between those two pieces of cut off. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is pop our resistors in, or two of our resistors that is. Just check the orientation. Yeah, that's one notch there. Okay, so first one is we've got a 1K between pins 8 and 7. So there's one of our 1Ks there. And all we're going to do is bend the leads in like so, and then bend them inwards. I apologise about the state of my hands, I was working in the car earlier. And there we have it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pop that in between the two pins. Like so. And then we'll just tack those up. Now, of course, if you don't want to watch me doing all this soldering, you can, of course, skip to the end and hopefully see a working project, fingers crossed. Okay, and again, same process, we'll take that off, trim the leads off, and just check for any shorts. Now we do appear to have a little short there just now, so just gently bend it into position, or out of position I suppose. And that should do us. Excuse me. Okay, so now we've got our 470K, and that's the same process. Just bend the leads in. Like so, and then we'll position those between pin 7 and 6, or 6 and 7 if you prefer. Excuse me. And then we'll just tack up one side, and then adjust the other lead. And tack that one up. Okay, so give it a little inspection. It can be quite difficult to see, but we're just obviously looking for any potential shots. Again, I've got a little one there. Bend it up slightly. And I think that's good enough. So that's the passives underneath and the links underneath. Next thing to go about is putting the LED and the resistor on. So we'll take our LED first. We can see from the diagram that the cathode goes to pin 1, which is obviously the shorter lead, and the anode is the longer lead, which is going to pin 3 along with the 1K resistor. So for the 1K resistor, for the anode, I'm going to bend that 90 degrees, like so. And then I'm going to trim up to probably about a millimetre there. And then for the cathode, I'm going to bend it 90 degrees to the LED itself, and 90 degrees, so 90 degrees that way from the actual can, if you like, or what you want to call it, and 90 degrees from the anode. And then what we'll do is I'll just bring this up here to roughly line it up, and we'll just bend that down slightly. So it's helpful if you've got a set of needle nose pliers, just for bennies, give you a nice sharp bend. Okay, right, so that's going to go to pin 1. So we're now on the bottom now, obviously, once we've flipped that round. This is pin 1 here, so the bottom left where the notch is, and basically the LED is going to get tacked onto that pin 1, via, at the cathode. So I'll just use helping hands again. If I get that into position where you can see it. There we go. So we'll just tin up pin 1. We'll take our LED, and there we have it. While we're there, actually, I'll just apply a little bit more solder to pin 1, because we are going to use that for a couple of other connections, and I will tin up pin 3 as well. So on top, I'm going to take a 1K resistor, and again we're going to trim that really short. And we will tin that up as well. Try and get a little bead of solder on the end just to help us out, but it doesn't want to play. I think we'll get away with it. So we'll just use the solder on the end of the iron. No, it really doesn't want to play. I'll try applying solder to the anode up here. There we go, that'll do it. Okay, so there we have it, eventually. So if I spin this around, in fact it's probably easier if I just take it off. What we're going to do now is we're just going to double back the other end of the resistor, and as you can see that now needs to go to pin 3, So there's pin 3 just there, so we'll just bend that round, get it into a rough position, trim it, and tack it on, like so. So there we have the resistor and LED mounted. I'll just trim that LED lead there. Okay, and the last thing to put on is our capacitor. Okay, so I'm going to mount this on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend the negative side like so, just so it's sort of towards the side of the can, if you like, and then I'll take that down 90 degrees that way, and then the positive side I'm going to bend up and over the can and then down the side and get it into a similar position. Like so. Okay. So we'll trim the leads off that. And the capacitor, again, negative's going to pin 1 and the positive side is going to pin 2. So I'll try and do this in my hand without burning my fingers. Let's pin 1 on. Hopefully you saw that. And there's pin 2. Right, so that looks okay to me. Let's just quickly check for shorts, because we have been handling it quite a lot, so it's always best practice just to double check, make sure nothing's moved out of place when we've been handling it. But that does look okay to me. So the last thing we've got to do is hook up some wire, which will enable us to power the circuit. So what pin 1 is our ground, so just tack that on there like so, and pin 8 is our VCC or positive side, like so. Now, all being well, this should work. So this circuit is designed to operate at 9 volts. So I shall hook up the bench supply. And we'll turn it on and see if it actually works. So here goes, fingers crossed. Right, we must have a short somewhere. So I'll just check. Yes, we do. We've got a short between pins. Whereabouts is that? 2 and 3. Just here. There we go. So just something easy to overlook and miss something like that. So just give it a double check. But there we go. A nice, fairly simple circuit. Quite pleasurable to build. You know, I quite enjoyed that. It just goes to show you don't actually need PCB. You know, you can build a circuit that's basically self-supporting and, you know, basically held together by itself. Of course, this is a really simple beginner circuit. If you're a more advanced hobbyist, you might want to try this with a more complex circuit. And of course, if you do, by all means, upload it to YouTube. And if you pop me a message with the link, I'll certainly put in the description so others can see what kind of projects you've done. So that's it. I suppose the last thing I'm going to say before I go is that the prize draw is still open in the competition time video I mentioned at the start. I did say the other day it was going to be 2 or 3 weeks, but for some reason I've had a flurry of subscribers in the last couple of days, and analytics is telling me I should reach 500 subscribers in just under a week's time. So I'll pop a link. Where's my finger? I'll pop a link down here for you to go and look at that and just give me a bit of feedback, and that'll be your entry into the competition, and I'll send you a little package out if you win. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, as always, please give me the thumbs up. If you didn't, give me the thumbs down. Hopefully you did enjoy it though. And as always, if you'd like to subscribe, if you want to click on my fat head just here, you can do so. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, all the best.